Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub Podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Marek, you posted something on LinkedIn just recently. It was an article from the Wall Street Journal, and your headline was better. The Wall Street Journal was good. It said, for food delivery, COVID-19 was a sugar high. Not bad. Marek's take, will food delivery still be hot post-COVID? Vote below. We're not going to set up a poll, everybody. Don't worry about it. But
vote for me, everyone. Vote for me, please.
Vote for Marek. Vote. In all seriousness, though, the article covered some recent research which raised some interesting questions. Lots of growth for the likes of DoorDash, Uber Eats, and all of them because restaurants were closed for much of 2020. So there was the inability to dine in, which meant that a lot of restaurants pivoted to doing takeaway. They were compelled to, basically. And even during this year, various stages of lockdown in different countries, it's still been there. But this research suggests that there are headwinds are coming, and that once there's enough people vaccinated and we return to dining in restaurants, this source of growth will disappear for the likes of DoorDash and Glovo and all those others. What does this mean for them then? How are they going to keep chasing growth?
Let's be completely honest. The speed of growth that was experienced during COVID will probably not come back, because when you have all restaurants closed or almost all restaurants closed for a long time, hopefully it's not going to happen again. Having said that, a lot of people, I believe, will have got used to ordering in, will have found that it's convenient and pretty cool. So I think some of the growth will remain. Probably the growth trend will not be as big as it was. There may even be decline versus highest COVID levels. But a lot of the infrastructure, things like dark kitchens, good value for money, good food to eat at home, will remain. But what is the learning? I don't know what you think, Ian, but from my perspective, I think that these companies who've grown very, very fast are going to need to find alternatives to keep their boys and girls busy on the delivery routes.
Yeah, there are a few things to bear in mind here. One is that customers' buying habits will change. People will most likely order less in terms of meals from restaurants. They have diversified. When I say they, I mean the likes of DoorDash, Glovo, and so on and so forth. They've diversified to partner with supermarkets. We saw that very early on in the pandemic. There was many more announcements about partnerships with supermarkets. Even this year, Glovo is partnering with Aldi, I think, in Spain to facilitate those orders. And so that's great. And even Estée Lauder, is that how you pronounce it? Some of their brands are going on Deliveroo. So, you can go to one of these platform apps and order a lot of different stuff. So that's how they're going to try and chase the volume and the number of deliveries. But let's also bear in mind there's this other headwind that wasn't really talked about so much in these other articles in the USA, which is about regulation. I know we don't want to get too much into these sorts of things, right, everybody? But there was a ruling just recently in, I think it was Spain, that said that all gig economy drivers have to be classified as employees. Now, what is that going to mean for the dollars and cents or the euros or the pounds or whatever behind all of this? That's the real question here. Will that be a shock to gig economy delivery? That means that the deep pockets of the funds that are backing it are no longer prepared to back it. Or will we see more cost pushed onto the customer so the customer has a more realistic view of it? I don't want to go on too much of a rant, Marek, otherwise it'll become the Ian show here. But there you go. Now I've just said those things. I'll just hand it back to you. You got any considered comments on that?
Thank you, Mr. Kerr.
You're welcome.
Actually, you raise a very good point, because putting aside the issue of demand having to fall, it clearly will be the case. They will need to find new areas, and I think those new areas will arrive, because one of the things that COVID has left us all with is this feeling that we want things that we wouldn't have ordered necessarily before. We want them faster. We want them on demand. So I think there's an opportunity. But you're right. The second big issue, and this is a potentially important headwind, maybe headwind's not the word, maybe landmine or sea mine is the word. Because, yes, I think this could be a big factor. And it's going to depend, Ian, on what finally happens, where and how. If you remember in the UK, about 2 years ago, DPD had a pretty awkward situation. Awkward's not the word, tragic situation, where a driver who'd been working too many hours and I think had diabetes died. there was a lot of publicity, and they offered all of their drivers, subcontracted drivers, the option to become employees, if I remember correctly, but made it very clear, which is the case, that if you're an employee, you get these and these benefits. But of course, the net's going to be lower because of all the other benefits you have. And I think that's where it's probably going to end up going, that people will not have all the benefits they had as an outsourced driver and the rates they had, and at the same time, holidays, sick leave, this, that, and the other, because it just potentially won't fly. So I think let's see how it finally develops. If you end up with a DPD type scenario, I think probably it's going to be win-win for everyone. And what's cool about that is the driver has the choice. If you have a court-ruled scenario, I'd be a bit more concerned.
And this is one that it's going to vary, I won't say dramatically, but it can easily vary from one market to another, one jurisdiction, I suppose is a better word, to another. So a ruling in Spain doesn't mean it will necessarily apply in Belgium. And it definitely doesn't mean it will apply in Australia. And even within Australia, there's a lot of attention on the gig economy at the moment, following a number of delivery drivers dying on the job. So that's sort of shining the spotlight on them. So it does mean that these delivery companies are in a situation where if they believe in themselves as a company, they'll need to find the volumes. And so if they set themselves up as being ultra-fast delivery companies, and they're going to compete against what we'd have called the traditional courier. So if you go back 10 years or even 20 years, you think about those traditional couriers that might have been on a bike or a motorbike or whatever, and they were clearly branded and all of that. I mean, they weren't delivering meals though. I mean, they were doing those B2B deliveries. And I'm not sure that a lot of those B2B deliveries are there anymore. That might have been there, urgently couriering documents across town, things like that. So let's see where all this lands, Marek. I think that maybe we're seeing this transformation of these delivery companies, and they find themselves, well, if we have to be compliant with employment law and all these sorts of things, as opposed to being contractors, does that mean they have to change the way they view their business as a whole?
I reckon it's going to be interesting to see how it does pan out. My general view is you're going to have two general geographies, developing markets, places like Central Eastern Europe, where I think it's going to take a long time for things to move to the sort of direction that you've got in the UK. I think the UK and Germany are the two markets where the regulator is most active in terms of gig economy drivers. And then you're going to get the UK, which is no longer in the EU, so they'll do their own thing. And I think it's going to be I think the UK is going to be pretty tough on gig economy companies. And then let's see what happens in Germany.
And one last thing is that there, of course, is the question of acquisitions. Even just as we're recording this, Mark, just recently, Glovo acquired, and I can't remember the name of it. It's the same-day delivery company it's a gig economy delivery company in Slovenia. Now, okay, people say, well, Slovenia, it's not a very big market, but how is Glovo getting into the market with an acquisition? And Glovo recently had a big, it was an IPO or a funding round? It was a funding round.
Yes,
so
they did quite well.
They've got the funding. They're going to expand. So let's see. This is just a new way of approaching same-day super-fast delivery, and we're going to see a bit of a transformation. Anyway, Marek, we're running out of time.
Before we wrap up, one thing that these guys do have, and I think it's really cool. You know that I love IDM, and who are the kings of IDM? People like Glovo, people like Uber, people like Getir, and this is the huge advantage they have. So watch out.
Can they get it right?
Get your act together fast.
Yeah. Comment below, everybody. This is a hot button topic. I know who's going to comment on it. Fire shields up, everybody. Marek Różycki, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.